Well, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about what you can legally shoot in an English garden in the UK. Now, I'm making a point of it being an English garden. We're not considering Wales, Scotland, Ireland. They're all under different general licenses. Your quarry's all different. So please check out the general licenses and make sure it's legal, and don't just take this video as gospel. A nice easy one to start with. So brown rat. Now they're problematic in many gardens in England. They're attracted by bird feeders, compost heaps, and just generally they're around. I think as we're all aware, a common saying is there's one always 10 foot away from you. So yep, you can legally shoot the brown rat. Obviously they carry disease, primarily Weil's disease among others, which can be fatal to humans if it's transmitted to us. Feral pigeons, again under general license. They're a pest. They defecate everywhere. They get under solar panels and things like that. Now, always ensure you've got a safe, clear bike stop, and your shots don't leave the boundary of your property. It's really important. You have to be an homeowner. If you're in rented accommodation, council accommodation, then you need landowners' permission, like many instances in UK or in England. You're not going to get that permission if you're in rented property. So what I'm talking about today will primarily only apply to homeowners in England. Now, I'm not advocating that you go out and start shooting things in your garden. You can only do it under general license if they're causing a problem. Now we've got mink. Now depending on where you live, they could frequent your garden. Now these are legal quarry for a UK or English airgun pest controller. However, it's highly unlikely you're going to see one. I'm including them in video because you can, if they're present. Now we all know that they're decimating fish stocks, particularly like big carp fisheries alongside otters and things like that. They're a top predator. They don't only take fish, they'll take mammals, birds, whatever they can get their hands on really. So if you're lucky enough, to live, let's say in Lincolnshire for example, or somewhere where you've got fens, dikes, drains, even rivers like River Trent running through the bottom of your garden, you're likely to see these. And if you follow conditions at general license in England and ensure that your shooting's safe in terms of like backstops, your pellet not leaving your boundary of your property and things like that, then it's fine to cull these critters. That brings us nicely onto grey squirrel. As we know, they're an invasive species that's been introduced to UK and England in particular. And again, they're no different to a rat in your garden. Okay, they don't transmit diseases to humans, but they are problematic. They will get into attics, loft spaces, eaves, things like that, fascia boards. And if they get into them sort of spaces, they love to chew wiring. If they chew wiring, then they're going to obviously pose a fire risk to you and your property. Now again, if they're on your garden, the legal quarry, they do all different types of damage in terms of stripping trees, bark stripping, that kind of thing. And if you're lucky enough to live in an area where there's red populations, then you want to be controlling these. Now we're getting to corvids, and this is where it gets a little bit trickier. You've got rooks, you've got crows, magpies. Again, under general license, you can control them. Now you'd have an hard time justifying why you're doing it in an English garden. But it may be that they're affecting red list songbird populations. You might live in an area, England, where you have good populations of these other birds. And again, under the right conditions, you can do it. Now for most of us, they're not going to be a problem. And me in particular, I don't mind seeing different types of wildlife in my garden. on them rainy days where you can't get out with rifle, you know, it's good just to observe them sometimes. Then we have the stoat. Again, it's going to be rare that you see these in a sort of urban or garden environment. Again, it'll depend where you live in England. If you live in countryside, you know, you've got a high probability of seeing them. They are not general licence. They are considered airgun quarry. You know, they're only small animals, no larger than a ferret. In fact, they're quite smaller compared to a ferret or a mink. And if your shot placement's good, headshot, a 177 or a 2.2 pellet at sub 12 foot-pound will control these critters quite easily. Now, good luck with that. You know, they don't keep still. They're fidgety little critters. But under the right conditions, like I said before, under general licence, these are legal quarry in an English garden. Now, they're fantastic animals to watch. I won't advocate just shooting them if it's sacred. They'd have to be causing a problem. But I would say they're going to do more good than harm in a garden. Then we have the rabbit. You can see stoat just chasing away. Rabbits in a UK garden? Yep, perfectly legal quarry. Again, urban environment, highly unlikely. But in right setting, you know, wouldn't hurt to take a few foot apart, would it? Be quite nice to see them in your garden, as long as they weren't causing too much damage. But it'd be ideal if you just go and sit on the back garden. You know, a couple of rabbits pop out from hedgerow. Whack them in fridge, whack them in freezer, get them in pan or pot. Be quite good actually. Then we have the magpie. Now these do decimate bird populations, particularly small birds, sparrows, finches, blue tits, wagtails, any sort of red list bird. If they are affecting them populations and you do it correctly, then yep, again, the legal quarry in England. Now, it would be frowned upon, don't get me wrong. And there'd only be extreme circumstances where you'd even consider doing it. Under general conditions and reasons, they won't pose that much of a problem. Just to reiterate, make sure you follow the conditions of the general licence. You know, it's very limited these days, reasons for control. And again, this video that I'm making today applies to England. But if you follow the general licence, you can deviate and it'd cover Wales, Scotland, Ireland, for example. Every person's worst nightmare is having a rat population out of control in your garden. So if you see these, feel free to control them. Then we have the pheasant. Again, legal quarry for an airgun, you know, under general licence conditions. At one time, they'd be quite rare to see in a garden, but I live in quite an urban environment and I'm seeing pheasants more commonly in area. They must be spreading from shoots. It's probably a safer environment in all fairness. You know, they find local brooks and woodland. They live out the days there without fear of being targeted by shotgun lads. Wood pigeon. Same, quite common in a garden, but they can be controlled. Now, it's generally just for protection of not livestock, crops. So if you're like a gardener, you're growing your own vegetables, things like that, and they're posing a significant problem, follow general licence, and you can control these. All simple principles apply, you know, general licence, own your own property, safe backstops. But again, they'd have to be causing significant issues, you know, just not nicking one or two onions. But if they start having an adverse effect on what you are growing to support your family, you know, then take them out. A recent not recent introduction, but they're becoming more common. Ringneck parakeet. Now I am seeing these, and I've actually seen a couple on my garden. Only fleeting sort of instances, but where I live in UK, they're becoming quite common in certain areas, and they are spreading to people's gardens now. Now, don't get me wrong, they're beautiful birds, and it'd be nice to actually see them around, but they are an invasive pest. They do cause significant damage. They strip trees if they're in flocks. are all the natural sort of fruits and things like that and nuts. So they will become a problem sometime in future, maybe I'd say within the next 10 years. So there is going to come a time when, yep, they will be common, probably as common as a wood pigeon or a blackbird or a starling, for example. But we are going to have to take action. And in UK and in England, yep, they're under general licence and they can be shot. And I've seen a few people who do shoot them when they come across them. So we'll have to see, really, I guess, see how much of a problem they become. And I would imagine within the next 10 years, you're going to see quite a few videos on YouTube of people knocking the numbers back just to keep that healthy, balanced population. It's like grey squirrel, for example, you know, they're here to stay now. We're not going to get rid of them. So it's all about just creating that natural balance and that natural population. The rook or corvids or any type, you know, you don't see many rooks in people's gardens unless you live in like a countryside environment. I don't really see any in my urban environment where I live. But again, they can cause problems, particularly livestock. Red-list birds, they are predatory, although they do a lot of good in countryside as well. You know, they eat a lot of ticks and lice and things like that, farmers' fields. So there's a fine balance there with rooks. The jay, although very, very beautiful and stunning, they're still a corvid. They'll still predate. They'll still eat, like, take chicks and eggs and things like that. So although they're a good looking bird, and yeah, they are a pleasure to see in gardens or in urban environment, again, there's a possibility that under certain conditions, you might have to control them. Now, I hope you like this video, something a little bit different, and something I've done similar in the past. So if you like it, give us a thumbs up, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.